All right. Thanks so much again for doing this with me. Super excited to be talking to you, a friend of mine, Spellman sister, all the things. Will you tell me a little bit about yourself and tell me who you are as a parent?
Yes. So a little bit about me. My name's Alana Moore, for those that don't know. I did graduate from Spelman, and I got my bachelor's in child development. And then I realized how much I loved like the social and emotional aspect of things. And so I went to graduate school for marriage and family counseling because I wanted to go in that direction. So right now I am serving as a clinician, and I work with victims and perpetrators of domestic violence, sexual abuse. I work with families, I work with couples. And I love the work. I've always like loved doing that and holding the space. So that's what I'm doing right now professionally. And then as a parent, that's a loaded question. Like, who am I as a parent?
Yeah.
I have a 7-year-old named Josiah. He's incredible and very active, vibrant. And me as a parent, I've always wanted to meet him where he was at. And I had to learn that over time, which I guess I can eventually talk about, is like really meeting him where he's at rather than having unrealistic expectations of where I want him to be. So
Yeah.
I try to create a healthy balance of routine because he has ADHD and he thrives off of routine and familiarity, but I also want to have as much fun as possible and expose him to new things and push him and challenge him into new things. So I try to create as much of a balance as possible as a parent.
Yeah, love it. Thanks for that explanation. So I heard you say he has ADHD. So can you tell me more about that and some of the challenges that you've experienced with that?
Yes. So ADHD, just for those that don't know, is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I don't necessarily think it's an attention deficit. I think that they pay attention to multiple things. It's not that they can't pay attention. Their just mind is on a lot of different things at once. He was diagnosed at 3. And I personally, like, I know this sounds weird, but at 11 months old, I was like, something is different. Like, he had an extra strong will, like an extra persistence to do things. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
he's not just strong willed. There is like an oomph, that he has to do things. And then when I would try to take him to different extracurriculars at 3, like martial arts and stuff, he was climbing all over things. It was just very difficult for him to sit still, follow directions and things like that. And I was like, I really do, like, it's hard for him to focus. And I'm like, is this a 3-year-old behavior? Because 3-year-olds, obviously they have a low attention span, but I'm like, is this a 3-year-old behavior and 3-year-old activity, or is this something more? But my instinct told me this is more than just 3-year-old behavior. So I went to get him tested, and he does indeed have ADHD, the combined type. He's hyperactive and inattentive. And some of the challenge, I mean, it posed a lot of challenges when he was first diagnosed, because his emotional regulation was a lot lower at 3 years old. Like his ability to check in with his emotions, be able to verbalize them and cope, and calm down was really difficult at that age. So there was a lot of things I would try to put him in, extracurriculars and things I would try to do that just, I was discouraged because those things weren't working out at that time, just because he was just everywhere. And at first, when he got the diagnosis, I was very, I felt discouraged at first. Like when they first told me that, I'm like, oh my gosh, what does that mean for him? And is his life going to be a lot harder? And so I went through like a grieving process with that. And then I realized, like, as I was observing him and stuff, I'm like, but he's so vibrant. He's super creative, he's super smart. He's super funny. And I'm like, there's so many great things about him. And so I really like started to embrace like him having ADHD, instead of me saying, oh, I wish he could be like this and that. I'm like, no, but this is who my child is. This is what is going on with him. So
Oh,
let's, meet him where he's at. And so we had a lot of challenges at first with I guess social expectations, like sitting at a restaurant, sitting places. That was very hard. And so at first we had it, but from 3 to now he's 7, he has made tremendous strides. Yeah.
yeah, man, you said so many good things that brought up some other questions for me. And so I want to touch on a couple of things. I'm glad you mentioned the grief, and then you mentioned meeting him where he is, basically. Like, I've heard you say that a couple of times, as well as like getting rid of like that extra expectation of, oh, this is how I wish he could be, this is how I want him to be, and just accepting him for exactly who he is. So I think that's so dope, and I'm gonna come back to those points in just a moment. But I want to know if, along with the challenges, you can speak a little bit about the challenges you experienced with the school. So I heard you say you got that diagnosis, right? Clearly he was at some point of school age. So can you talk just briefly about like some of the challenges you experienced with trying to get the services that he needs for school?
Absolutely. So I actually put him in school. He was age 4. There was a transitional kindergarten, and I wanted him to have the experience of preparing and getting ready for what the school setting looks like, what the routine kind of looks like. And I wanted him to get that a year early so that by age 5, he would be like, okay, I'm kind of used to this. So I put him in at elementary school at age 4. And for the first, I would want to say 3 to 4 months, he was doing fine. He was doing great. And then he started having a really difficult time in the classroom with like emotional regulation, or like when the workload was increasing or becoming more difficult, he was having a really difficult time expressing that he was frustrated or asking for help. So they would, the teacher would tell me like, he's getting up out of his seat, he's pushing chairs, he's taking things off the wall, things of that nature. And so I scheduled a meeting with the principal just to talk about like, because they were talking a lot about a lot of behavioral things, and they had like a disciplinary meeting with me. And I'm like, he has an ADHD diagnosis, and I really am seeing the need for support in the school setting, at this point, because, like these things are happening. And so I would really love for him to get some behavioral support. They said that he didn't really meet the criteria for an IEP. The principal was trying to tell me, no, he doesn't meet the criteria, but he was getting suspended at age 4. So like, I'm like, how does he not meet the criteria for the IEP?
Right.
So I was disappointed. And we live in California, Orange County, and the Black population is less than 2%. So it is already difficult to try to have our voice heard. And so I tried so much to say like, he really needs these supports, and I wasn't being heard or listened to by the school, which was really discouraging. And because he kept getting suspended and he wasn't getting support, and he was missing that classroom time. And so I went to the district, and I talked to the special education coordinator at the district level and was talking to her about the concerns. And then I consulted with a special education attorney who let me know what my rights were and all of those things. She really helped me advocate for myself and go back and told me some of the things to say, like everybody has a right to an IEP and testing. And if I request testing, then we should be able to have it. So our next meeting, after I talked to these parties, basically the principal felt back in the corner and was like, okay, no, we do want to give her, testing and all that. But the unfortunate part is, and I've talked to and worked with a lot of parents, the unfortunate part is a lot of parents that go through this process don't know the proper channels of who to go through, and the administration at the school knows that. So sometimes if they don't want to do the testing and they just kind of want to exclude the child, they will tell you things like, no, we can't do it. Sorry, we can't. But you have every right to get those things done. And so they
Yes.
finally did it. And of course, then he got supports and it made a world of difference in the school system. But the unfortunate part is a lot of parents don't realize, like, what can I do? Like, they feel helpless to what they can do for their child if the school is constantly telling them no. But you have every right to get your child an IEP, it's an individualized education plan, or a 504 plan that is more so for behavior, and to get them the support that they need so that they can thrive, instead of being pushed into a special needs classroom when really they don't need to be pushed into a special needs classroom. They just need some additional one-on-one support to navigate in the general ed classroom.
Yes. Oh, thank you for that.
Mhm.
Let me be honest in saying that's part of the reason why I really wanted to talk to you about this, because I know that you have had experience with this. And so I love how you just said, like, you just broke it all the way down for us, because a lot of times we don't have that knowledge, right? We don't know what to do. I see that. So I'm in a school system as well now. And so I see that with the parents who are like, they don't know what to do and they don't know how to advocate for themselves. And so thank you for being that voice that can say, hey, I've been through this, and here's how we kind of navigate through this. And so, of course, I'm going to come back around to that too, but I want to know a little bit more about that process. But let me go back to, like I said, what you were saying about the grief. So can we talk a little bit about, so all of these things that you've described, all of these challenges that you were describing that you were going through with your son, what was that like for you mentally, physically, emotionally? You mentioned the grief, but like, tell me how you felt as a parent experiencing these things with your son, with your firstborn, your only child. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. So I definitely felt at times, just to be honest, I felt like helpless. I felt like, am I doing this right? Like, am I doing right by my child? Because when you're constantly trying different ways to help your child cope, calm down, or self-soothe, and you're trying to go in public places and you're trying to, like, teach them these social skills, and you think it's getting to a certain level, and then you go out and maybe your child is having a tantrum, he's on the ground, on the floor, things are thrown everywhere. And there was a lot of feelings associated with it. Is like, am I a firm enough parent? Am I a loving enough parent? Am I, a good enough parent? And so there was just a lot of grief, and I would feel embarrassed, like, that I didn't have the ability to change the situation. And so I would feel like, what can I do at this point? Like, I'm trying everything. I'm trying, the positive parenting strategy, everything. And I'm like, what can I do at this point? But I think my biggest mistake was constantly having these ideals of, I want him to be at this level in this place. So I'm gonna keep trying to push him into that, instead of, again, saying, this is where he's actually at right now. So you have to work with him where he's at and accept where he's at.
That's so good, and a tip that could be taken for any parent, right? Like, not just, oh, my child's struggling with ADHD, like, that's life, like, in general. So thanks for sharing that. Were you ever concerned about, like, your ability or the way you chose to handle things, especially like before the diagnosis, like, as far as, I guess, even maybe if I could be more specific. So like, when our parents raised us, they raised us a certain type of way.
Right.
And when they raised us, that meant like, you better, act right, you better this, you better that. So I think I kind of heard you allude to this, but like, were you ever concerned that, like, okay, I'm doing all the things that I think are good parenting, but it's still not working? Am I traumatizing or like messing my child up, by like my tactics?
Yeah. And so I definitely would, because I know, like, I would get frustrated if I was like giving a directive or saying something and it wasn't following it. And so in my frustration, sometimes I wondered, I'm like, am I really being intentional with the way that I'm trying to teach him things? Or has it just become that I'm emotionally exhausted and frustrated, and that's the way that I'm, disciplining him? It's out of emotion. It's no longer, the intentionality wasn't there the way that it needed to be. So I did think, like, am I am I exacerbating the symptoms, you know? And by engaging with, like, when he would be upset and then I would be upset because my anxiety would increase when his would, it would just be a back and forth, and both of our anxieties would rise, and I would be like, okay, this is just making things worse, you know? And so I'm like, I'm not even modeling what I need to help him, because am I not knowing how to regulate my emotions when I'm dealing with these frustrations and stuff? And so that's where I thought, like, am I doing a disservice? I definitely was at a point where I thought I was, just because I feel like it became more about the emotions I felt about the situation than actually like being intentional and trying to teach and be patient. And so that was hard for a little bit.
Yeah. What concern, thank you for that. What concerns have you had overall? And again, you alluded to this a little bit, but I'm hoping you'll go a little more in detail. What concerns have you had for your son's like physical, mental, emotional well-being, whether it be currently at the age of 7 or like as he continues to progress?
So for him, I think that I'm trying to have more faith and hope than concerns, but concerns are very real. And so there's a lot of impulsivity with ADHD. My son actually also is not on medication. He's never been. We've just tried behavioral approaches. And if there may be a need in the future, I wouldn't be closed off to that. But some of the impulsivity that comes with it, I'm a little concerned that there will be situations where you would have to kind of think through certain things, and then his impulse might just be like, no, we should just do this or do that. And I don't want him to be in dangerous situations and make impulsive decisions, you know? And so I just want to make sure that he can think things through. But I know, again, with ADHD, you have so much going on in your mind. There's so many things you think about. It really takes a lot of energy to focus and to really think things through and to problem solve. And so I would just say some of my concerns would be the emotion overtaking the decision making, you know, in certain things, whether it's in academics, in sports, in friendships, in relationships, just that him having that emotional regulation enough to be able to navigate those situations in healthy ways.
Got it. Cool. Thanks. So we've talked a lot about your challenges, a lot about your, concerns. How did you get to the place where you are today? As far as like beginning to find solutions for him that work today, like how did you get to that place?
So I definitely like when he was 3, 4, I started reaching out to a lot of support groups, like online, like the ADHD, which I didn't even realize so many existed, but there was like ADHD and ODD. ODD is oppositional defiant disorder that's usually coincides with ADHD.
Yep.
I would find so many parenting groups. And when I saw those groups and I saw those stories, I was like, okay, I am not alone, you know?
Yeah.
And that made me feel just so supported in things that I can do, you know? And they gave me different tips and things that I could do to help navigate my own situation. And so I'm like, okay, I need to be calm. I need to be patient. I need to be, and so it just really helped me in the journey to feel like I had a lot of people to relate to, you know? And so that really helped me get to a place of you aren't alone. Be patient with the process, you know, be patient with where he's at in his development and meet him where he's at. And then I ended up really just reflecting and saying, like, there are so many positive things about it. If you think, like me talking to myself, if you think negatively about ADHD, how do you think your son is going to think about the ADHD?
Come on.
You know? And so I'm like, you have to change the way you think about it. And that birthed a book that I wrote called ADHD is My Superpower for him. Yes. Because I'm like, yes, we need to really focus on the positives, you know? There's so many great things about them, and they're already going to go through their academic system. And, there's going to be negative stigmas around ADHD. It's just unfortunate, but there is just negative stigmas around it. And I wanted him to embrace the positives, and I wanted me to embrace the positives, and everybody else as well. So we can look at it differently and just give more grace to it and be more patient. So
yeah,
I'm not really sure if that answers the question, but
yeah,
that's really where I tried to get to a more positive place and have just more patience and understanding and empathy for it, because I don't have ADHD. So who am I to not, to say that how difficult it is? Like like I know that it takes a lot for my son to do certain things, and I'm very proud of him. And so what I might be able to do, or things I may be able to, ways I might be able to problem solve, he does it differently. And a lot of times he does it better, than me. So it's just like, just understanding that he has his differences and giving grace to those. And so I've come to a much different place than I was at, I would say 4 years ago, for sure.
Yeah, cool. When you first realized you needed help, what do you wish you would have found?
When I first realized that I needed help, I wish I had somebody to physically talk to, like and help me, like that was maybe had ADHD themselves, or had a child with ADHD, or raised a son specifically with ADHD. I think that would have been very helpful, so that I could have understood, okay, this is how I can go about things. And especially if somebody was able to tell me, okay, at this age, I did struggle with these things as well, and this is what I did. Like mentorship, I guess, and support definitely would have helped. Like I said, the support groups were amazing, but I also would have I think that like a mentor or somebody that had been through it would have been great to talk to in the very beginning. Now I have talked to a lot of those people, but in the very beginning, that would have been great. And then I finally met somebody who I could talk to when I got a handle on things, and that was super helpful. But in the very beginning, that would have been great too.
Yeah. Where did you find that support? So I heard you say you went to the support groups, but like, where did you find it? It almost to me kind of sounds like you're saying, I kind of had that mentorship now. So how did you find that?
So actually, I would just talk to, I'm pretty transparent. So I would talk to people at my church and things like that, or people who would be open about their children and like, oh, my child, I think he has ADHD or ADD. And so I would literally talk to those parents and say like, how did you manage? And they would sit and talk and be very thorough. And then I created these connections and these supports. Like I just created a support system by seeking out and asking for the help, and the parents that were actually willing to talk through things with me and talk about some of those difficulties. I just kind of sought them out and was like, okay, how did you do it? And not even always just parents with children with ADHD, but even parents with boys and things like that. I'm like, there's more to him than just ADHD. So I would just reach out to people that have done it or have been doing it longer than I have. And that's how I have that network of support.
Yeah, that's really good. What I heard you say is you weren't afraid to ask for help. Like you realized you needed the help. It was apparent to you, and you were kind of almost like led to some individuals who have been really supportive for you. So it sounds like at this point you feel like you have a solid support group that can help you through things with JoJo.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. What do you see that support group being able to like be there to support you long term as you're going through like the different phases with him as well?
I definitely do. And again, I think that also takes the continuous reaching out for help. We all have like our own things going on, but sometimes just reaching out and saying like, I'm facing, like a difficulty right now. And sometimes we're scared to reach out and feel like we're bothering people or things like that. But sometimes I'm like, I need answers, like I need some guidance and stuff. So I do reach out and say, how did you handle this? Have you ever experienced this? But even in those ADHD support groups, you ask that and you ask a question like that and you'll get at least like 50 plus answers, so
Yeah.
that's helpful in itself, just to give you a little bit more insight. It's helpful. But there are also support groups that I found. If there's an app called Meetup, and you can go to that Meetup app and search whatever support group you want or need. And they pretty much have like a wide array of supports. And you put ADHD and they have like Zoom ADHD support groups in your area. You put your area, your city in there. They have so many in-person or Zoom supports. And so it's just very accessible. We just have to go and find it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your transparency. That's been really helpful. Anything else you feel like you want to share or that I should know?
I think that every part of the journey is going to look different. And I realize like I can't get comfortable with, like, he's 7 now and he's doing an amazing job in school and sports and all of these things. And he has different challenges now than he did at 4, or 3. The challenges at 3 were just trying to be able to even articulate those emotions. Now his challenge now is being able to manage them. He can articulate them very well, but managing them when they get very difficult, and he's done so much better with that. But I realize every part is going to look different. There might be some regression here or there. There might be something that triggered him back into something, and I have to be patient. And I learned to sit and talk with him and to have connection before correction. And I really needed to learn that. I'm like, sometimes I pick him up from after school program. He had a hard day. I'm like, there are hard days that I have, and I want to talk to somebody. So I just give him the space to talk. And then you're not justifying his behavior. You're trying to give him the space to get to the root of what was it that caused him to mismanage his emotions today? What was the trigger? What was going on? Because you want to figure it out so you can teach and work from there, instead of just saying, I heard you did this, that's not okay. And then, but you don't actually address what was bothering him in the first place. So if it bothers him again, he could just go back to that place, even if he was corrected. So every part looks different, and I'm still learning to be patient and understand that there's just things I won't know, but there's things I'll learn, and we'll get the tools. If we don't have them now, we'll get them. We're meant for this. Every parent, you guys can do this. And so that's what I want to say is, we got this.
Yes, I love that. I actually remembered I do have 2 more questions. One, you said right now you guys are choosing not to do meds. You're using behavioral techniques. So this question will be a 2-part question. 1, can you talk about some of those behavioral techniques? And then 2, can you speak to, like, are there any other changes you had to make? Like, I've heard of like diet changes or, just like I heard you talk about like consistency and routine. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so we do use a reward system, like incentive system. And so I wish I could show it to you, but he took it off he just came in and was playing with it right now. But it's a reward system, and it really shows different things like, I will not interrupt, I will follow directions, I will clean up my toys when asked the first time, just different things. And so it's incentivizing because he can earn little, and it doesn't always have to be food related or really big. It could be like, you could stay up 5 extra minutes today, because you got your stars in every single one of these areas. You didn't interrupt, and that's very hard for him. Is like, you didn't interrupt, you listened, you were very polite, and so we use the reward system, which has been really effective for him, because he performs really well. And eventually with the reward system, though, I want to say you want to wean it out, because you want your child to naturally do those things without feeling like, oh, I'm going to get 5 extra minutes of this, or I'm going to get this, but it's an incentive, you know, to say like, to focus on positive behaviors, like, oh, wow, like you cleaned up your room. So that's amazing. And, you know, you point out those positives instead of the just always being punitive, like, don't do this, don't do that. I learned to switch the language of like, wow, I really saw you waiting patiently while mommy was in this meeting. I really saw you stand patient when we were waiting in that line. You held my hand and you waited very patiently for your turn.
Yeah.
So things like that, that I reiterate, and then we reward. And again, little rewards, but they really work for him. And then routines of like, you get up in the morning, and I try to give autonomy of choice, meaning like, yes, we have to wash our face, brush our teeth, and eat breakfast in the morning, but which one do you want to do first? You know what I mean? At least having autonomy in that. Which one would you like to do first? We're going to get all them done, but so that he feels like he has some sense of decision, you know, of he has some input in the decision making. And so that really works really well as well. And then to the routine of like, you get home, you eat your snack, you do some of your homework, mommy's here to help you. And then we move on, like, or a nighttime routine of, okay, we're going to read a book, and then we're going to pray, and then it's just having that routine really helps, because they kind of start going into those things naturally. As they wake up, they do go and wash their face, they do get ready and sit down for breakfast, they have their clothes on, they're just used to it once you do a routine every day. But if you lose the routine, it could be really hard. Or they could kind of push the boundaries because there's no routine in place. So it's like, okay, well, we could just kind of just do it. The idle time is difficult for them to manage. So I try to keep a routine in place and let him know what we're going to do before we do it. Like today, it's like, okay, today we're going to get up, we're going to have breakfast, we're going to relax for a little bit, then go to the barber shop, and then we're going to go to the park. And then, you know, like telling them what's ahead, so that they don't kind of get blindsided by things. And if the routine changes, it's like, oh, something came up, being transparent with them, something came up, we're going to have to go here first, and then we can go back here. You know, how do you feel about that? And things like that. So that for us has really, really helped. And following through too, not just the rewards, but following through. If he doesn't receive something, it's like, okay, well, we can earn it tomorrow, but following through on that, because again, the boundaries will be pushed if you're like, I asked you to, you know, clean up your room, and they left it messy and they had a tantrum. You help them regulate, but you praise them for being able to regulate, but you still follow through on the consequence of them maybe not having access to something if they didn't do it, which I've had to learn is like, you have to be really consistent, because if you don't follow through on the positive, the rewards, and the consequences, it can things can get challenging. So, but that has really helped behaviorally. We haven't used the medication or anything like that. But sometimes for sleeping, he does use melatonin to help his mind calm down so he can get really good sleep and wake up with a fresh mind. But the behavioral supports have worked.
Love it. Thanks for that. That's really good to hear. You gave a lot of great tips, a lot of great nuggets there. So lastly, I'd just like to know a little more about like what led to the book. Yeah, just talk about the book for a moment for me.
Yeah, so again, I was just like, I really want to grow a positive perspective, because I'm like, my son is not just hyperactive and rowdy, like the stigma of like hyperactive and he gets into things and all, like there's so much more. Like I would watch him and he would be making so many things out of these Legos that he has really quickly too. Like, and he would just be very creative about it, you know, or making up imaginative stories. And I'm like, his mind is so brilliant and he remembers things super well. He's very honest, because whatever comes to his mind comes out. And I'm like, I respect it. And I love that honesty. He has a bright personality that draws people to him. And I'm like, there's so much more than just the challenges, you know? And so I was like, I really want to highlight those. And so as I would watch him play and be playing with him, I'm like, he has a lot of creativity. He has a bright personality. He's really compassionate when he thinks about other people. And so I was like, I want to write about that. Like the way his mind, ADHD, enhances these positive qualities. So that's what really led to me writing the book, to describe to people ADHD manifests itself in these amazing ways as well, and can birth out a lot of great things as well. So while we do recognize its challenges, because it has its challenges for sure, there's another side to that we need to be encouraging, our children to see. And so, especially for me as a parent, to encourage, because originally the book was actually just going to be a work that I was going to give just specifically to him, and it was going to be a me and him thing. And I was encouraged to make it, I guess widespread. So, and then I love it because now thousands of people are encouraged by it. And I'm very happy, because that's not what I thought was even going to come out of that. But I really just meant that to change my perspective of, what I thought about ADHD, and encourage my son when he hears ADHD that he doesn't go to the negative. And he doesn't. He's always calling himself a superhero, saying he has ADHD superpowers. And so, yeah.
That to me is dope. Amazing. Thanks for writing the book, because it was really great. And what I love that I just heard you say is literally breaking down cycles, right? Like what I heard you say is you're empowering your son, not disempowering him. What I heard you say is that you're showing him that he's stronger and better and just as great as anyone else in the world. And that ADHD doesn't have to limit him. And that to me is amazing to hear a parent say, period, but then a Black woman say to her young Black man who is going to face so many struggles anyways, right? And so that's really dope to hear you say that you're giving him so many different tools in so many different ways. And so thanks for sharing that with me. That was really, really helpful.
Yeah, really helpful. Absolutely. It's a journey. And I think once you learn, you grow and you reflect, you just see a lot of things differently. And so I'm super glad for this journey. Like, again, sometimes parents expect parenting to look one way. Like, as you're pregnant, you're thinking of all these different things of like, oh, my child's going to be this and this and that, but he or she's going to be much more than you've ever imagined. And so not to limit them in a box of saying, oh, they're going to do these things. My son has done far beyond like what I have expected. And so just to be open to that and know that things aren't going to look exactly like you picture them in your mind. They're going to look however it is of that he's like taking me on a journey of learning of like, okay, where are we going now? Type of thing. Yeah. And so I'm learning and still learning to be patient with that and look forward to those types of things.
I think that mentality, the mentality of my child can teach me something. Like I heard you say earlier, I think you said sometimes I think I know what I'm doing, kind of, but like he knows a better way, so that mentality of giving our children a voice, allowing them to teach us something, definitely helps to break down intergenerational trauma, right? It helps to break down cycles. It helps to break down a lot of different things within our family structure, to put our kids in a much better space. And so you're dope to me.
Thank you.
You're dope. So yeah, thanks for your time today. I love you. I'm in awe, and I'm gonna sit back and watch this and take in all the things that I can from it.
I love you too. And I love being here. So thank you. I'm honored. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, girl. All right.